Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be going over how to send bracket orders to interactive brokers that will have a take profit, stop loss, and entry order. And in this example, I'll be continuing on with trading support and resistance levels, continuing on with the theme I covered last week. If you want to backtest trading support and resistance intraday, you will need to take a look at the backtest we ran last week. So in this tutorial, I have two scripts. The main script will contain all the information and will loop through every 15 minutes to generate trading decisions, and it will use all the functions we create in the second script, which contains API keys and getting the real-time data. So just to go over how this works, we're going to source our functions by running line 1. We're going to create a time sequence every 15 minutes. So the script will sleep until the start of every 15-minute bar. So we set the time we want to trade. In this case, it'll be 15. Now, just in case this crashes or stops at any time and I want to rerun this, I need to get rid of the timestamps that have already passed. So I'm only concerned with future bars. So this will get rid of all the timestamps that have already passed so that we don't generate an error. So I'll run that. Now these two lines have to be run in conjunction. So it'll sleep until the very next bar, and then it'll start the script or the algo. And if we open this up, we need to source our functions again at every bar. We're going to get intraday data by using the TD Ameritrade's API. So we're going to get real-time data in line 11. So let's run that. Now we need to generate current support and resistance levels. So we're going to use all the support and resistance levels that we find prior to today. So that's why you see SR end date as yesterday, technically, and the trade date, which is the current day, and the threshold will be 25 cents. If the current price is within 25 cents of the closest support and resistance level, it'll generate a trading signal. If it's above the level, it'll be a buy. If it's below, it'll return a short signal. Now the market's already closed, but let's run that to see what it generates. We'll take a look at res. So for the given day, it found two signals, one at 11 and the next at 11:45. And here we see that both of these were shorts. Now how this algo is designed is to take profit at a predetermined price or else get stopped. And this is why we need the bracket orders. We will use this XDS object to make a decision. So back in our script here, we're going to pass res into the next block of code. Now if res is not null, and also if it didn't generate an error, it'll step into this next block. The next thing we need to test is whether or not the last observation in our XDS object is within 20 minutes. This will avoid sending orders at every instance or at every bar. So we need to double check to make sure that the current bar is the most recent trade signal. Again, we subset the last observation into SIG, and then we send the bracket order. Now here we specify what stock we want to trade, the signal, which will tell the broker if we want to long or short, the amount I want to trade in dollars, our stop loss at 25 cents from our entry price, or take profit at 50 cents above our entry price. So let's go ahead and try and send an order to interactive brokers by running this line. And if we go to our workstation, here we will see our order. So we're trying to sell one share at this limit price. And we also see that we have two additional orders. So either we take profit or we get stopped. All right, so back in our script, depending on whether we get a signal or not, it'll keep looping every 15 minutes. And we set the script to sleep for the next bar. So that's all we need within this algo block. Now let's take a look at our functions. So within the script, we need to require some packages. We're going to store our API key for TD Ameritrade. And we also need our token in order for us to get real-time data. So once we have assigned those, we need to create our functions. And for this example, there's not that many. So the first function we have is to get the bearer token. We don't need to pass in any parameters. If we open this up, we just read in our token. We get a new access token, formatted to get a bearer token, which will be used to get real-time data. We also need to create this get access token function, which is the very next one, where we just pass in our refresher token and our API key. If we open this up, we need to create a post request using this URL, attaching some headers, and then extracting our access token. These two functions work in conjunction and will be required in the following function to get intraday data. So if we open this up, we create our URL by passing in the ticker we want data for and the frequency. By default, I've coded this to get the past previous 10 days of real-time data. I think if you go anything further than that, it won't return any data. So 10 seems to be working just fine. So after we create our URL, we get our access token, we format it, and then we pass that in to get real-time data. We extract the content, row bind the candles format it into an XTS object, and then return it. So all the functions up to now will help us get intraday data in order for us to generate signals. After we have this XTS object, we need to decide whether or not the current price is trading within the range and tolerance of one of the support and resistance levels. So that data gets passed into this next function, which you have seen in my previous video, where we supplied the support and resistance end date and the current trade date, along with a threshold in cents to consider the proximity of the current price to the support and resistance level. So if it's really close, we are willing to take the trade. Otherwise, if it's out of the range, then it won't end up creating a signal. So if we open this function, the first thing we need to do is calculate our support and resistance levels by using take chart and passing in our end date. We're going to extract those levels and also subset the current trade date. We're going to add a column for the signal, and then for the current trade date, we're going to iterate through each bar. So at every bar, it's going to find the closest support and resistance level. Next, we find the point difference between that level and the current price. If that difference is within the threshold, we need to find out if the current price is above or below. And depending on the case, we will either go short or long. After we assign our signal, we're going to then lag our signal column, since this will get ran at the open at every bar. Next, we subset cases where the signal is not equal to 0. And if we get consecutive signals, this will be a representation of the stock consolidating at a price range. In order to avoid sending orders at every bar if it's consolidating, I just removed the cases of consecutive signals and only kept the very first one. So this line will get rid of the consecutive signals. And then finally, just return the open, high, low, close along with the signal, which takes us to our next function, which is to send the orders to interactive brokers. Again, we need to assign what stock we want to send an order to, the signal, which is the XTS object, the amount we want to use to trade, our stop loss and take profit. So if we open this up, we need to create a connection with interactive brokers, and that's only if the signal is not equal to 0. So in this case, we have two conditions. The first is if we get a 1, which is a long order. If I minimize this, we will have another section where it tests if the signal is a -1, we will then send a short order. These two are fairly similar. So we're going to require the package, create a connection to our workstation, require account updates. We're going to start off by getting the stock info. So within the required contract details, we're going to pass in our TWS connection, get the stock information. In this case, for the SPY, we're going to create a TWS stock object, which will be saved in the security. We need to assign our ID, or the stock ID, I suppose. Once we have that, we can create a parents order, a take profit order, and our stop order. We start off by requiring IDs for the parent order, which will be used for the following two orders. And we need to assign the number of shares we want to send, and I'm rounding down to the nearest whole number. So we'll go ahead and send the security in along with our connection, create the order by passing in the parent ID. We're sending this as a limit order, the limit price, a flag of whether or not we should trade outside regular trading hours. The action will be to buy. Since we're long, we need to pass in the shares. And for the first two orders, we need to set transmit equal to false. For our take profit order, essentially the same thing. We need to require a new ID for the order. The order type will be limit. We need to pass in the parent ID, the limit price, which is just the current price, plus our take profit amount. The action will be sell. We also need to pass in the number of shares, and again, transmit equal to false. For the stop loss order, we need to set our auxiliary price to the current price minus our stop loss amount. The action will be sell. We need to assign the total quantity of shares. And then finally, we need to set this transmit equal to true. So this will place all the orders. After it does, we just disconnect. And for our short order, it's pretty much the same thing. The only thing that really changes is the action. So we have a sell for the parent order and buys for the take profit and stop loss. After we send in the orders, we just need to disconnect. All right, in the next block, we just have helper functions, and depending on your time zone, these will need to get modified. For the first function is essentially just trying to find the next trading day. So if we open this up, we don't need to pass in anything. It'll just take the current time. If the current time is after the market closes, but before midnight, then essentially our trading day is the following day. Otherwise, the current day and time will be our trading day. So you need to set this time to your local time, depending on when the market closes during your time zone. The next helper function is sleep. It'll pass in a timestamp. And when we subtract it to the current time, we will extract the number of units or attribute in that time difference. And depending on the units it returns, we need to set our script to sleep for the very next bar. So this is just trying to calculate the number of seconds we need to set our script to sleep for the next bar. And then finally, our last function is just to generate the time sequences we want to trade by just passing in the time and force. In this example, I assigned this to 15, so it'll create time sequences every 15 minutes. And again, this is one of those functions you will need to modify depending on your time zone. So essentially, it'll use day to day to find the current trading day. I want to start trading at 6:45 and end at 13 or 1 p.m. Pacific time. It'll create a time sequence every 15 minutes. And then in that time sequence, I'm going to add 5 seconds because I want to trade 5 seconds after the bar closes. In order to start this algo, we need to go back to our main script and we need to run these 2 lines at the same time. So if we run that, we'll take a look at the console. We get a message saying that the script will sleep for this amount of hours and it will start at 6:45 with 5 seconds on 12/1. So it'll loop through this time sequence until all of our timestamps are exhausted at the market close. So that concludes this tutorial, guys. I hope this was useful information. I'll leave a link down in the description area to my Patreon where you can find both of these scripts. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys in the next video.